All right. Hey, folks, welcome to a press call. I'm Vrithi Jain. I'm the Deputy Executive Director at the DCCC for Strategic Messaging. We're here today to talk about Republicans announcing their Commitment to America agenda, the threat their extremism poses to America, and what this means for the midterms. We're going to shoot for about 30 minutes here. We'll start with opening remarks from DCCC Chairman Sean Patrick Maloney. Then we'll go to DCCC Red to Blue Chair Sarah Jacobs, and then to DNC Chairman Jamie Harrison. If you have a question, please use the raise hand feature so we can call on you. And if you're dialing in, you can press *9 on your keypad to raise and lower your hand. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Chairman Sean Patrick Maloney.
Well, thank you, Vrithi, and it's great to be joined by my colleague, Sarah Jacobs, and of course, it's always great to be with the Chairman, Jamie Harrison. So thank you both. Thank you all for your interest. Look, this is real simple. I mean, this is today. You saw the Democrats lead on supporting good policing, and it's just one more example of the Democrats getting real results and the Republicans offering empty promises. And the notion of a commitment to America is a cynical exercise from the party that refused to commit to almost entirely refused to commit to better roads and better bridges. A party that refused to commit to lower prescription drug costs and taken on the big drug companies, didn't commit to standing up to big pharma, didn't commit to putting a minimum tax on every corporation in America, wouldn't commit to a clean energy future and millions of good clean energy jobs. My goodness, wouldn't even commit to veterans' health care until they were embarrassed into it, wouldn't commit to gun safety legislation. So the commitment to America is a cynical excuse for the lack of commitment to the real results that Democrats have delivered in those areas and more. But of course, the greatest failing of the Republican Party has been their success in ripping away 50 years of guaranteed reproductive freedom from all of us and taking out of the Constitution the bedrock privacy rights that support not just reproductive freedom, but everything from your intimate choices, marriage equality, birth control, for goodness sake, even interracial marriage. And that is the place they have brought us. And we are seeing in special elections from Alaska to upstate New York that the voters are rejecting the cynical reality that is the MAGA Republican movement that is extreme and dangerous, that has taken away our reproductive freedom, that's threatening our political freedom by ignoring the attack on our Capitol and by making it harder to vote. No, these are warmed up leftovers from a party that has no ideas and no real nutrition to offer on the policy level. They have no plan for our economy. While we lower gas prices, they seek to stoke the frustrations and the anger for their own political gain. So we have a plan for the future. They have a ploy to win power for themselves. But I'd like to turn it over now to my colleague from California, Sarah Jacobs, who can talk a little bit more about the difference between our real plan for America and what you're hearing from Kevin McCarthy. Sarah?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you everyone for joining us. I'm Congresswoman Sarah Jacobs from San Diego. So as a young woman, reproductive health care is my health care. And for me and millions of Americans, our fundamental right to make our own decisions about our bodies are on the line. Our right to an abortion, to receive potentially life-saving care, to decide if, when, and how we build a family, all of those rights are on the line. And so we know that stakes of this election couldn't be higher. And don't let them fool you. Kevin McCarthy has promised that a Republican majority will pass a national abortion ban. And the Commitment to America that was leaked signaled support for a federal abortion ban just 1 week after Republicans in Congress introduced a bill that would ban abortion nationwide. So this plan, and frankly, the agenda they have supported for decades, is clear. They are hell-bent on stripping us of our freedom to make decisions about our bodies, decisions that should only be made between a person and their doctor, and decisions that out-of-touch politicians, and frankly, any politician, should have no part in. So Republicans in Congress and their radical candidates are on the defense. They know that their decades-long fight to strip us of our reproductive freedom is wildly unpopular. But while they're on the defense, they're frankly doing a terrible job at covering it up. They can scrub their anti-choice positions from their campaign websites. They can delete their tweets. They can run TV ads to intentionally confuse voters. But year after year after year, they've worked to pass abortion bans and to roll back healthcare coverage. And they have been very clear about what they're trying to do. They think that they, not you, should have control over your healthcare and your body. But we've all seen just how dangerous the Republican Party's war on women has been. And I'm just going to go through a few examples of what Americans have seen in these past few months since the Dobbs decision. We've seen a 10-year-old rape victim forced to flee to another state to see a doctor. We've seen women facing life-threatening consequences waiting for their doctors to decide whether or not they're sick enough to qualify for the procedure that will save their life. We've seen a woman forced to give birth to a non-viable fetus with no skull and no chance of survival. We've seen people who experience miscarriages or people who have autoimmune diseases who've been prevented from accessing their essential medication as a result of Republicans' extreme anti-abortion laws, all while House Republicans are working to pass a bill that could make that a reality for millions of women nationwide. We've seen private Facebook messages between a mother and a daughter being used as evidence to prosecute a woman who had an abortion. So the list of tragic, dangerous, and devastating stories could go on, and it will only get worse if Republicans are in charge. And no woman is safe from Republicans' war on our reproductive freedom. I'm very proud to be from California, where abortion is legal and accessible. But if Republicans pass a nationwide abortion ban, no state, not even California, would be safe from Republicans' overreach into the personal lives of women and their families. So we can't let them win back the majority. And that's why it's so important that we're talking about this issue. So a few anecdotes. I've spent the last 2 months on the campaign trail in battleground states for our incredible red to blue candidates from Arizona to Michigan. And everywhere I go, I've heard over and over again from women, Democrat, Republican, and independent women who are outraged and worried about their rights being taken away. Just last weekend, I was in Ohio, where they already have a statewide abortion ban. And I drove through some of the most conservative parts of the state wearing a shirt that said, "Say abortion." And it was bold, I admit. But every single woman I encountered, waitresses, cashiers, everyone went out of their way to tell me how much they appreciated it. And at roundtables in Michigan and in Arizona, women cried, telling me how scared they were and how much it means to them that we're protecting their rights. So women are scared and they're angry, but they also know they can do something about it. And we are seeing record numbers of women registering to vote, volunteer, and make their voices heard. And they're going to vote in November. They know what's on the line. They know that we have to keep the Democratic majority in Congress if we're going to protect our reproductive rights. So thank you. And I will turn over to our wonderful chairman of the DNC now.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Thank you for all your hard work. For our red to blue candidates and candidates who are running to make a difference. I want to thank my dear friend, the chairman of the DCCC, Representative Sean Patrick Maloney, who is working extremely hard to make sure that we can continue to defend democracy, fight for freedom, and to keep our majorities in the House. And hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We are now less than 50 days out from this midterm election, and the stakes couldn't be any higher. You know, tomorrow, Kevin McCarthy, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and House Republicans are going to unveil their agenda. Mind you, this is the same Republican Party who didn't pass a platform for the first time ever in 2020. But they've already come out and they've told us repeatedly exactly what they want to do. They want to ban abortion nationally, throw doctors in jail, and are even talking about banning some forms of contraceptives. Folks, this is extreme. They have promised to repeal key pieces of the Inflation Reduction Act and raise healthcare costs for most Americans. They want to undo all of the legislation that Democrats have passed to lower prescription drug costs. And they want to cut Social Security and Medicare. And their agenda will continue to undermine our democracy. They want to roll back our rights and make it harder to vote. They are relentlessly committed to Donald Trump's big lie, and they just voted against putting in safeguards to ensure what happened on January 6th never happens again. This is who the Republicans are. No amount of workshop talking points can change any of that. Voters have already seen the truth. And the difference between our two parties could not be more clear. Since the president took office, he and Democrats in the House and the Senate have worked tirelessly to deliver on the promises made to the American people. Republicans have only tried to stand in the way. Kevin McCarthy, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and House Republicans will try to convince you that they aren't extreme. Just having Marjorie Taylor Greene there shows you that they are extreme. And they want to do things like lower costs. They think they want to do things like lower costs, tackle inflation, or create jobs. But their records tell a different story, folks. They have spent the entirety of these 2 years in Congress voting no. Their actions speak a lot louder than their words. When President Biden and Democrats passed the American Rescue Plan to reopen businesses and schools, get millions of Americans back to work, and provide funding to make our communities safer, every single Republican voted against it. Nearly every single House Republican voted against fixing our roads and bridges and expanding access to clean water and broadband internet. And Kevin McCarthy led the charge to side with the Chinese Communist Party and block legislation to bring supply chains back home and bring manufacturing jobs back to America. At every turn, Republicans chose to obstruct this president and Democrats and the work being done to provide real help to millions of Americans. And that is their commitment to America. Voting no. It's a commitment to the extreme, out-of-touch MAGA agenda that Republicans continue to shamelessly peddle to the American people, a commitment to take us backwards. But folks, we aren't going back. The American people deserve better than what McCarthy and Republicans are offering, and voters will hold them accountable in November. And with that, I turn it back to Vriti.
All right, folks, any questions? All right, I see one hand raised. Dan Marins from HuffPost, go ahead.
You muted, Dan.
I'm hearing a lot of different policy items here. There's a focus on abortion, but also a focus on sort of the issue of election safety and democracy, and of course, Social Security, Medicare, and prescription drugs and domestic manufacturing. I know that based on what we've seen from the Republican Party, if you guys could, any one of you, drill down on maybe the sort of safety net and kitchen table economics piece of that, and why you think that's especially potent with voters. I also know that the party in some states in particular has been making a play for seniors in a way that hasn't been the case in the past. So I'm curious about that.
Colleagues?
Want to go?
Just on the legislative front, Daniel, obviously the difference with older voters could not be more stark. The Republicans opposed the historic action to lower prescription drug prices in the Medicare program, and this is very important, cap seniors' out-of-pocket costs at $2,000 a year, not to mention $35 insulin in the Medicare program. Democrats did that, Republicans opposed it. And now look at their plan, which is to put on the chopping block every 5 years, Social Security, Medicare, other spending like veterans benefits. So if you're a senior, your choice is between one party that says, we may take away your Social Security and Medicare every 5 years. You won't know until Congress votes on it. And the Democrats who say, we're going to strengthen and protect Social Security and Medicare. We are going to lower your prescription drug costs and cap them in the Medicare program. So no matter what else happens, you can budget that you can afford your prescription drugs if you can do $2,000 a year. So that's not some effort to win seniors. That is a stark policy difference between the two parties. And of course, Sarah spoke so eloquently about the difference between us on abortion. We know that for so many voters, that's a huge driver. And I the reason I mentioned their lack of commitment to everything from the Chips and Science Act and bringing good manufacturing jobs back from China to the other measures is because we have laid out step by step a real plan to bring our country forward and to lower costs for families that are struggling, and to bring us all forward together. And so the Republicans have been characterized really only by their opposition and their cynicism, because they're focused on their own power and they're willing to do anything to get it, including ignoring the attack on our democracy, undermining voting rights, and taking away our reproductive freedom, and ignoring gun violence in our schools. And that's the difference.
Yeah, and I'll just add to what our chairman said so eloquently. I mean, I would also just reject the notion that reproductive freedom isn't a kitchen table issue. I'm a 33-year-old woman. Pretty much the only thing I talk about with my friends is who's having a baby, who wants to have a baby, who doesn't want to have a baby. And when you're looking at your budget, whether or not you can afford to have a child is a very important calculation that you're making at your kitchen table. And so I do think that this is a very real issue for people across the country, and not only for those of us who are of reproductive age ourselves and experiencing it, but we're hearing from 80-year-old dads who are worried that their daughter who had an ectopic pregnancy, if that were to happen today, wouldn't be able to get the healthcare that they needed and could die. So this is a very real and present thing for a lot of people, and it really is a kitchen table issue.
One quick point. We also are the party that would have given that young family a child tax credit to help raise those children, cheaper childcare, capping it at 7% of your income. And how about preschool for every 3- and 4-year-old America? Not daycare, school for 3- and 4-year-olds. So those three pillars would have enormous impacts for so many working families out there. That's our agenda going forward. The Republicans, of course, opposed all that as well.
All right, just a reminder to use the hand raise function if you're interested in asking a question here.
Yeah, I don't know. What did he know? Because I said.
Looks like we don't have any hands raised. So I'll give it a last call while we sort of wrap this up, but thank you to Chairman Maloney. Thank you to Red to Blue Chair Jacobs. Thank you to Chairman Harrison, all of you for joining this. I know we're all looking forward to that wonderful rollout at 9:30 a.m. tomorrow with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Kevin McCarthy standing side by side. Thank you all for joining and have a good evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
guys.